The ground is supposed to be muddy right now. That's the thing people don't understand. In Kentucky, early spring is supposed to be the wet season. Boots sinking into soft earth, fields too saturated to work, farmers waiting impatiently for the soil to dry out enough to plant. That's how it's supposed to go. But this year, the ground is cracking. Western Kentucky has received just 6.78 inches of rain so far in 2026. That's nearly 6 to 7 inches below average. To put that in perspective, this time last year, some parts of the state saw 11 inches of rain. Right now, the National Integrated Drought Information System has classified Western Kentucky as a moderate drought zone, with the southernmost counties tipping into severe drought territory. And the winter that just ended? Paducah, Kentucky recorded its driest meteorological winter on record. Not one of the driest ever. The sky over the bluegrass state has gone quiet, and what happens next could define the entire 2026 growing season for a state whose farmers were already on their knees. This is the story of Kentucky's dying farms, and it gets worse every single day that it doesn't rain. To feel the weight of this drought, you have to understand what spring actually means to a Kentucky grain farmer. This is not a season of rest. This is the season that determines everything. The soil needs to be moist enough to allow seeds to germinate. Corn, soybeans, wheat. These crops don't grow on grit and stubbornness. They grow on water. Plant a seed into dry, hardened soil, and one of two things happens. Either the seed sits dormant, waiting for moisture that may or may not come, or it germinates poorly, producing a weak, struggling plant that has already lost the race before summer arrives. Farmers across the state are already making desperate adjustments. In some counties, growers are planting their soybean seeds nearly an inch deeper than normal, digging down to find any moisture still hiding in the subsoil. It buys a little time, but it comes with a dangerous catch. If a hard rain eventually does come after a deep planting, the seeds may not be able to push through the soil crust in time. It is a gamble on top of a gamble. And across the state, hay fields, the lifeblood of Kentucky's cattle operations, are coming up so sparse and spotty that cattle are eating what little grows almost as fast as it appears. Farmers who had planned to stop feeding stored winter hay weeks ago are still hauling bales, and those stored supplies are running low. The grass that should be lush and thick right now is thin, slow, and struggling. Some operations are already hunting for hay to buy, and when supplies are tight, the price climbs. It is one more expense piling onto an industry that already could not afford another setback. Here is what makes this drought so uniquely cruel. It is not arriving in a vacuum. It is arriving on top of 3 straight years of financial punishment. Since 2022, Kentucky grain farmers have watched their income collapse in slow motion. Corn prices fell, soybean prices fell, wheat prices fell. Input costs, seeds, fertilizer, fuel, equipment, refused to fall with them. University of Kentucky agricultural economists calculated that the average Western Kentucky grain farmer was losing $52 for every single acre planted on a standard corn-soybean rotation. The American Soybean Association confirmed that soybean farmers nationally lost $89 per planted acre in 2025 alone, the third consecutive year of market losses. The break-even cost of growing wheat nationally was nearly $8 a bushel. The market was paying $6. 3 years of losing money, working capital exhausted, debt growing, bank relationships strained, and now, at the exact moment when farmers are supposed to put this year's seeds in the ground and start the long climb back toward recovery, the sky refuses to open. The timing could not be worse, and it is not an accident of bad luck. Climatologists warned all winter that this was coming. The meteorological winter of 2025-2026 was the driest in 45 years across the contiguous United States. Drought in the Midwest expanded from covering 30% of soybean growing areas to 53% over the course of a single winter. corn area drought grew from 30 to 51% in the same window. The soil moisture reserves that are supposed to build up during winter, the deep reserves that carry crops through dry stretches in summer, never materialized. The tanks went into spring half empty. And now it's April, planting season, and the tanks are still nearly empty. Local agricultural extension experts have used plain language to describe what this means. If the dry conditions persist into May and June, the months when corn makes its critical push toward canopy closure and soybeans set their pods, the losses could be devastating. Drought stress during those windows does not just cut yields, it can wipe them out. Fields that looked green and promising in April can turn brown and brittle by July if the rain does not come. But here is the deepest wound in all of this. It is not about yields, not really, not at the core of it. It is about the math that was already broken. A Kentucky farmer who is already losing $52 an acre before the drought cannot survive a year where drought cuts yields by 20, 30, or 40% on top of that. The crop insurance helps, but it does not make a farmer whole. The federal emergency payments help. Kentucky received roughly $140 million through the latest USDA assistance program, but that money was meant to offset the losses from the last few years of collapsed prices, not absorb a new weather catastrophe on top of everything else. There is only so much a balance sheet can absorb before the math becomes impossible. And when the math becomes impossible for one farm, the consequences ripple out in every direction. The farm equipment dealer in the county seat loses orders. The local grain elevator handles less volume. The feed store sells less. The hardware store where farmers buy parts loses a customer. The small restaurant where people gather before heading out to the fields sees fewer faces. Tax revenue to the county shrinks. The local school takes a quiet hit. The rural clinic loses patients who have quietly moved on. This is the mechanism by which rural communities do not just struggle, they hollow out, not in a single dramatic collapse, but in the slow, steady departure of economic activity from the towns that have always depended on what the land produces. The state's political leadership has raised alarms about what trade wars, collapsed commodity prices, and federal funding cuts have done to rural Kentucky. That alarm is real and justified. But drought does not wait for political solutions. Drought does not pause for emergency sessions. It just keeps not raining, day after day, week after week, while the soil grows harder and the seed sits waiting and the farmer watches the sky. An extension agent in one of the hardest-hit counties put it with the kind of directness that only comes from watching a community fight for its survival. These farmers, she said, cannot afford another setback after the last few years, and if the dry conditions that began in the fall and never let up persist through the critical summer months, the setback will not be modest. It will not be a rough year that gets absorbed and forgotten. It will be, for many operations already stretched to the limit of what debt and resilience can sustain, potentially the last year. The last year. That phrase should stop you. Because right now, with the ground cracking and the seeds waiting and the rain not coming, that is the reality staring down thousands of Kentucky farm families who have already given everything they have to hold on. The state is experiencing its driest start to the season in memory. The farms are hurting in ways that go beyond drought, beyond prices, beyond any single cause. They are hurting because everything has gone wrong at once, and the sky, which has always been the one thing that could still turn the season around, is not cooperating. All they can do right now is plant deeper, stretch their hay supplies, watch the forecast, and hope. Because that is what farming is at its absolute core. It is hope planted in the ground. But hope needs rain to grow. If this story hit home for you, hit subscribe so you never miss what's happening in rural America. Share this with someone who takes food for granted, and leave a comment. Do you think Kentucky's farmers are getting the help they actually need? I'll see you in the next one.